Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 242, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Abu Dhabi. The 27-0 Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on one of the most exciting fighters in the history of the sport, Dustin Poirier, for the undisputed lightweight strap, Shaq.
Yeah, Khabib Nurmagomedov is currently the greatest lightweight of all time. He's never lost. He barely loses rounds. I mean, he's the definition of dominant. And now he's going in there against Dustin, the Diamond Poirier, who, the hashtag paid in full. I mean, this guy has one of the most earned title shots ever. And it was good to see him get that title down here in the great state of Georgia. So it's a good fight. I feel like it's Khabib's toughest test, at least the one of the more credible guys on paper that he's fought in a while. And I'm excited for the fight.
Well, Shaq, I know everyone remembers when Dustin Poirier fought Max Holloway in Atlanta, Georgia, and we took those big odds on Dustin Poirier. And I even said I would bet Dustin Poirier at plus 185 versus anyone at lightweight except Khabib. Well, now Shaq, he's plus 360, so I can't wait to talk about this main event.
If Khabib wasn't around, Dustin Poirier, he'd definitely probably be undisputed champion. But this is, why we have such thing as dominant champions. We want to see if they fall or do they continue their dominance.
And, man, this card is so stacked top to bottom. I know a lot of people were doing a little complaining, but, man, I love it because similar to last week, which was kind of China versus the rest of the world, this is basically, let's put it this way. They got a guy named Muslim, a guy named Muhammad, and a guy named Islam on this Abu Dhabi card.
Yeah, it seems like the theme is Muslims versus the entire world. So I'm excited for these fights.
Man, I am too. And let's get right down to business, Shaq, because first up, in the lightweight division, we got Don Madge. He's 8-3, and Fares Ziam is 10-2. Currently, they got Don Madge minus 160. The comeback on Fares Ziam is plus 140. Well, Shaq, Don Madge was initially supposed to fight Magomed Mustafayev, and we think that would have been an all-out war, but now they called up French lightweight prospect Fares Ziam to come in here, taking on short notice. He's already knocked out UFC vets. Do you think he gets it done in his UFC debut?
Fares Ziam has a very bright future. He's got a decent wrestling game, good elbows, and he seems like lately, these last 4 or 5 fights, I mean, he's been handling his competition the exact way he should, beating UFC vets like Abner Lavares and the other guys on his French local scene, and Don Madge is kind of a mystery going into his debut, because before his debut, I was saying, I mean, look, Sean Shelby matched this guy up with Teemu, and this was, Teemu coming off wins over Nick Leinster, Close, and Lando Venata. He was going to put Don Madge in there for his debut, and then he had the performance that he did against T. Edwards. Now, he came out there and put T. Edwards on his ass right away, and then he got taken down. T. Edwards is a 2-time Division 1 qualifier, but I mean, Don Madge was attacking off his back the entire time. It's not like T. Edwards ever got close to passing his guard. I mean, one could say if that ref didn't touch him, he might have gotten that armbar. So I feel like Don Madge, prior to the T. Edwards fight, really, his body just didn't look like that. I'm under the speculation that, he met Chris Cyborg and everything took off to the moon. So this is the guy coming in from his debut that fought against T. Edwards. I honestly think Fares is in trouble. 2 years old. A lot of his fights lately have been going a little bit too easily. The competition's not too tough. And I think here in this spot, I think it's going to be hard for him at 22 to keep his composure after getting hit with some of these critical knees, these critical high kicks to the face. And, Fares is like James Vick a little bit, man. He likes to leave his chin up in the air. And, when he's fighting these guys like the typical Brazilian punching bag on the local scene, he'll get away with it. But against Don Madge on short notice, I think he gets knocked out.
Man, I'm very excited about this fight, dude, because initially it was like, oh, man, who's this French guy they're bringing in to get an ass-whooping against Don Madge? And then I watched Fares Ziam, and I was kind of impressed, man. For only 22 years old, he's definitely got a lot of good things going on. In my opinion, he was one fight away from that UFC call. He was supposed to fight in November. He would have won that fight, then got the call. But now the call came a little bit early, and you're not fighting some dude on the French local scene anymore. Now you're fighting Don Madge. And when you talk about a guy like Don Madge, you're talking about one of the craziest transformations I have ever seen in all my years of watching fights. If you watch this guy's fight right before his UFC debut, you're like, who's this pipsqueak coming from the South African scene? He's going to be like the next Gareth McClellan, you know what I mean? He's going to be the next Juan Potts. And then he met Chris Cyborg, AKA, he met Chris Cyborg's doctor. All of a sudden, the guy puts on 20 pounds of muscle. All of a sudden, he's this killer that we've never seen before in the lightweight division. He's going out there, zero fear whatsoever, standing in the pocket, landing any shot he wants, drops the guy, goes for the finish, gets taken down. Then he almost arm bars the guy. He's attacking off his back. Then the second round comes around, head kicks the guy twice, and good night, Irene, 50K bonus. So I was very impressed with Don Madge in that UFC debut. And like I said, if you go back and you watch that local scene footage, it's not even the same guy. So whatever undetectable shit they're doing over there, keep doing it, Don. I think Don Madge comes out here and capitalizes on the tall man defense of Ziam and goes out there and gets the knockout. Next up in the middleweight division, we got Zach Cummings. He's 23-6, and Omari Akhmedov is 18-4. Currently, they got Omari Akhmedov minus 120. The comeback on Zach Cummings is plus 100. Well, Shaq, a lot of action has come in on Zach Cummings. He opened plus 145. He's currently plus 100. Do you think the line movement on Zach Cummings is justified here in Abu Dhabi?
This is a very interesting fight because Omari Akhmedov at 170 has a reputation of a guy that would start off really strong, and then he would kind of gas in those late rounds. We saw it time and time out, when he fought Elizur Zaleski, when he fought Serginho Moraes, even when he, beat Razak Lasan, he was looking for ways out in that third round. So when you look at the size of Omari, he's huge, man. The fact that he was cutting at 170 was just kind of disgusting. So now he's up at 185. He hasn't lost. He's got the wins over Tim Bosch. Very good fight with Marvin Vettori. And Vettori fight, look, we know what Omari's game plan is. He wants to swing those big looping hooks, and those looping hooks are really hard. And his opponent, Zach Cummings, I've been on the record to say he's one of these guys that can take flush KO blows to the dome. No problem. And he's another guy that, was struggling at 170 and he had to move up, and now he's 2-0. So in terms of the competition level, I feel like at 185s, Omari's had the tougher road. We're talking about Marvin Vettori, who personally I think it's only going to go up for him. And Tim Bosch, is a part of some of the greatest comebacks in UFC history, and he got a 30-27, and that was for once where he actually managed his cardio throughout the 3 rounds. So I feel like Omari Akhmedov in this fight is going to tag Zach Cummings. I feel like he's going to beat him to the punch. I feel like he's probably going to be slightly landing a little bit harder early. But it's just going to be a matter of, can he maintain that? Because we know at times that Zach Cummings likes to turn up in there. We saw it his last fight against Trevin. Trevin was supposed to be the much more athletic guy, and Cummings got in his face and, started taking over late. So I'm going to go with Omari Akhmedov by decision, but I definitely do think it's a winnable fight for Cummings. But I think the power of Omari in those first 7-8 minutes is going to build him a big lead, and I think he's going to edge out a decision.
Look, this is a fight between two former welterweights meeting at middleweight, and I think they both made the best decisions of their careers to move up. And as you've noticed, man, extreme weight cutting, it has a certain effect on these guys, and, they need to breathe more. They need to be able to move. They need to be able to think while they're inside the octagon. And, we can talk about the home field advantage, and I know some people are going to comment and be like, well, he's Russian. How is it a home field advantage? Listen to me right now. If you think that the judges aren't rooting for the Muslim fighter here against an American who's not Muslim, by the way, you better think twice, because they definitely are. This is Abu Dhabi here we're talking about. So Omari Akhmedov, if this is a close fight, Omari Akhmedov is getting his arm raised, and I think it will be a close fight. Look, when you talk about these guys, Omari Akhmedov, he lands slightly more than Zach Cummings. He defends slightly more than Cummings. I just think that's going to be the difference. I just think he's going to come out here and edge out a guy like Zach Cummings. And I've kind of noticed, and I don't want to be the guy that says Zach Cummings is on the decline or anything like that, because, he's kept his spot on the roster for so long, but I kind of expected more against a guy like Trevor Smith. I kind of expected more against a guy like Trevin Giles. So, listen, man, I'm going with Omari Akhmedov here via unanimous decision. Next up in the welterweight division, we got Nordine Taleb. He's 15-6, and Muslim Salikhov is 14-2. Currently, they got Nordine Taleb minus 120. The comeback on Muslim Salikhov is plus 100. Well, Shaq, Muslim Salikhov opened minus 195. All the action's been coming in on Nordine Taleb. He definitely has the more output. Do you think his chin will hold up throughout the 3 rounds?
There's 2 ways to look at this fight. From a technical standpoint, Nordine likes to keep it really safe. Look, he's 38 years old, and he's been knocked out, or not knocked out, but severely beaten up in 2 out of his last 3 fights, and Claudio Hannibal Silva and Sean Strickland. And like I said, 38 years old. When you look at his his last few wins, we're talking about Oliver Enkamp. I'm a guy that, is no longer in the company, and Kyle Prepelec, who's a little tiny 55er, you know what I'm saying?
Who's
So,
about to no
Nordine
longer be in the
Taleb,
company.
who might possibly no longer be in the company. Just put it this way, Prepelec's lost to Troy Lampson and, Kevin Lee and a whole bunch of other guys. So from a career standpoint, overall, one could say Nordine Taleb is on his way out, aka barely hanging on the whole bit. And Muslim Salikhov, and the other way to look at this fight, technically speaking, when you talk about Nordine, you want somebody to pressure him. It seems like that's the evident thing. You gotta pressure him and touch his chin, and he'll generally pull stunts and put himself in bad spots or go for leg locks, the tri-star leg lock, and get his face smashed. So Muslim Salikhov really doesn't fight like that. He's also one of these low volume guys, and he just likes to look for his big counter shots. So there's a chance that either this fight is kind of lackluster up until Nordine gets knocked out, or this fight is lackluster and it's a close decision. I feel like both guys, when you want to fade Nordine, I feel like he's definitely not playable at a line like this at minus money. It's just the guy that he's facing is kind of old himself, kind of, doesn't move like a Strickland, or isn't going to necessarily put that fear in him like Claudio Silva. So I do think there is a chance if he's struggling to throw that is going to be a very close fight. But I also see a chance where Nordine's chin just simply can't hold up. I don't think Nordine can knock Salikhov out. I think that, if he's going to win, it's just going to be by a lackluster, bullshit decision. So I think that I'm going to go with Salikhov. I feel like it should be probably a pick 'em. It's surprising to see he opened that wide, but maybe they know something we don't know. He's been off a layoff, coming off a USADA suspension. So there's some other factors coming into this fight. He is 34 years old with the USADA thing, even though it was probably some Osterin. At least it wasn't LGD-4033, but I'll go with Salikhov by third round knockout. I think the fight's going to be a little slow, but eventually I feel like he'll touch his chin.
We talk about how Muslim Salikhov is 34 years old. Well, Nordine Taleb is 38 years old, and I think Nordine Taleb is barely holding on. I mean, when you talk about some of these fights where it seems like, hey, this is supposed to be a walk in the park, Nordine, go finish Oliver Enkamp real quick. Go take care of Kyle Prepelec. Look, I know officially, he got the wins, but man, I was expecting a lot more dominance in both those fights against, non-UFC caliber opponents. Let's be honest here. With Muslim Salikhov, I know he had a very disappointing UFC debut against Alex Garcia. A lot of people were let down by that, and it's definitely very alarming. But when I look deeper into it, something I realized, Shaq? Alex Garcia has scored 29 takedowns in his UFC career. So even though we give the guy a lot of shit, he's actually out here putting up numbers in the takedown department, taking down almost every opponent he fights. Whereas my boy Nordine, he used to be all about the takedowns, but he's kind of changed his style a little bit. Back when he was first in the UFC and he's fighting these guys like Chris Clement and Vic Grujic, he scored a combined 10 takedowns in both those fights. Since that point, he's had less than half that amount with all the combined opponents. You understand what I'm saying? So he's gotten really into his tri-star technical point striking, and he's very on point with it. But man, I feel like he's barely hanging on. You go back and you look at a fight between him and Sean Strickland, and the way people talk about that fight is that, Nordine was winning the whole fight and then he got caught. And I think that's such an asinine and immature way of looking at that fight, because what I saw Sean Strickland picking a man apart with his jab until the man could no longer hang on, and then it was time to turn up. He turned up, he put the Frenchman down. So I just didn't really see what the big deal was about how Nordine looked in that first round. And in this fight, people are talking about if this goes to decision, Nordine's automatically going to win. Look, if it goes to decision, I understand. Both guys are Muslim, so it could go either way, but one guy has the name Muslim in his name. But no, all bullshit aside, I really think that around the second round, maybe the third, I think Muslim Salikhov closes that distance and knocks out Nordine Taleb. I don't think Nordine's got the wrestling necessary to come out here and capitalize on that weakness in Salikhov's game. And I got to give Salikhov a lot of credit, because this is a guy who about 2-3 months ago, he received his purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you know anything about Jiu-Jitsu, they're not just out here handing out purple belts. If you earned your purple belt, that means you're putting in work on that mat every single day. So I really think that Alex Garcia fight was embarrassing. He was pissed off. He was embarrassed. It was a wake-up call. He realized, hey, I ain't just about to come out here and be the king of spin against Ivan George and Melvin Guillard anymore. Now we're stepping up. Now it's the UFC. So I think that he's addressed that. I think he's put in the proper work. I think he comes out here, gets the biggest win of his career, and knocks out Nordine Taleb. Next up in the welterweight division, we got Belal, remember the name, Muhammad. He's 15-3, and Takashi Sato is 15-2. Currently, they got Belal Muhammad minus 365. The comeback on Takashi Sato is plus 305. Well, Shaq, you got Belal Muhammad fighting in Abu Dhabi. He's one of the smartest fighters in the welterweight division. He could have been a lawyer, but he decided to be a pro MMA fighter. He's taking on Takashi Sato, coming off the knockout win over Ben Saunders. You think Belal's about to extend this win streak here in the Middle East?
It was a really good fight. You know, they got Belal lined up north of minus 300. He opened up in the minus upper minus twos. And Belal Muhammad is what I like to call just I don't want to say a gatekeeper, but he's just a guy that, you know, he's always going to be a solid top 25 guy. You know, I don't ever see him really hitting the top 15. Definitely see him holding that spot outside the top 15. And, you know, this fight against Sato, you know, one could say it's a setup fight, a fight to get Belal Muhammad a win. And it probably will play out that way. You know, I've seen Sato drop by lesser fighters out there in Pancrase. He lost to Franca by submission. The only thing I would say Sato has on Belal is size, and Belal is not necessarily a fighter known for his knockout power. Definitely has good striking, but more than likely this fight with Sato, they're going to have to slip and rip inside the pocket, and when the line's that wide, you know, there's definitely a chance with Sato's size and his understanding of range that he might catch Belal. Belal's been dropped before, but I do think Belal's overall the better fighter. I think he'll mix in that wrestling, you know, just make him just give him something to worry about. But I've been hearing good things about Sato. I hear he's been getting a lot better at Hard Knocks 365. I do think the fight could possibly play out closer just due to the fact that Belal's not really known for his knockout power, but I do think he will outwork Takanori Sato for a decision win.
You know, I've heard this narrative going on all week about how the line is too wide because Belal Muhammad is not a finisher. And it just makes me think, like, you guys know that winning a decision is a perfectly acceptable and real way of winning a fight, right? Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with winning decisions, right? So I just don't see what the issue is with Belal Muhammad coming out here and 30-27ing this guy in Abu Dhabi. So to me, just because he's not going to probably get a first-round finish doesn't mean that the line is too wide. To me, I think he's going to come out here and take care of biz. He's too smart for this guy. He's too well-rounded for this guy. Look, Takashi Sato, I love his left hand. You know, he can drop a lot of guys with his left hand, but let's be honest here. It was 50-50 against Ben Saunders until he landed that left hand. The fight before that, he got dropped by some guy that, let's just put it this way, wouldn't even get a contender series call. The fight prior to that, he got finished by Glaico Franca. So I don't really see what the big deal is with Takashi Sato. I know he's big for the weight class, so, you know, big deal. I think Belal Muhammad mixes in the takedowns, effectively uses his striking, keeps him guessing the entire time, and goes out here 30-27. So I'm going Belal Muhammad to get the biggest win of his career. And I say that not based on the name value, but based on where this fight is. You're telling me a guy named Muhammad is about to come out here and lose to Sato in Abu Dhabi? I don't think so. I got Belal Muhammad here, unanimous decision. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Ottman Azaitar. He's 11-0, and Teemu Packalen is 8-2. Currently, they got Ottman Azaitar minus 235. The comeback on Teemu Packalen is plus 195. Well, Shaq, after that devastating result against Mark Takashi, I thought we were never going to see Teemu Packalen make his return to the octagon. Well, here he is, and he's taking on the debuting Ottman Azaitar. He's the brother of Abu Azaitar. You think my boy Ottman comes out here and gets one for the family?
This fight with Teemu is what we like to call a setup fight. You know, Azaitar is definitely a little bit green. He's definitely on the entry level in terms of the lightweight division. But one thing that separates him and Teemu Packalen is guard advantage. And the fact that Azaitar is willing to put himself on the line to end up breaking you. And Teemu Packalen, you know, we look at his fight with Makhachev. It was on short notice. He won the first round, gassed out the last two. And then the next two, he knocked out a French guy named T-Ball Gowdy who pretty much loses every single fight. And then he got stiffened up by Mark DeCasey in a way where he was unconscious midair. So his confidence level is probably going to be really low. Although we haven't seen him in a really long time, he might come out with some new tricks, but he's a low percentage fighter. Azaitar, the crowd's going to be on his side. And I'll tell you what, Azaitar, people are saying, yeah, overall he might not be that good, but his last 3 fights, progressively, they've gotten better. He got dropped by a lower level fighter, then he came back, handled the guy, and then his last fight, he smashed the guy in less than a minute. So I feel like it's getting better for Azaitar. He did this whole camp with Khabib and them at AKA. I feel like he comes out here and overwhelms Teemu Packalen for a late first-round stoppage.
I've been seeing Teemu Packalen using the hashtag Teemu 2.0, and I'm kind of wondering what that means because Teemu 1.0 wasn't anything to write home about. Here with Ottman Azaitar, let's just leave it at this. If this fight hits the scorecards, it might be guaranteed that Ottman wins this fight. But as far as the matchup is concerned, yeah, Teemu's the taller guy. He's going to have a reach advantage, no doubt about it. And Ottman has been put in some bad spots against some very sketchy competition. But one thing I love about this kid, Ottman, is he is tough as nails. He is a real fighter. This guy is a warrior. As long as he is conscious, he's going to move forward the entire time and try to win the fight by any means necessary. Whereas you look at a guy like Teemu Packalen, and when he starts to get tired, he'll start to flop to his back. He'll start to tell you to come into his guard, and he'll start rolling for leg locks. He'll do the whole bit. I mean, Teemu's the kind of guy where he'll get on top of you, and you'll be like, yes, Teemu. Then instead of keeping that top position and winning the round, he'll drop back for a leg lock, give up position, and lose the round. So you cannot trust Teemu Packalen. I got Ottman Azaitar here via knockout. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got Liana Jojua, she's 7-2, and Sarah Moras is 5-5. Currently, they got Liana Jojua minus 145. The comeback on Sarah Moras is plus 125. Well, Shaq, Liana Jojua opened minus 215. She's a former Fight Nights Global Champion. All of the action has been coming in on Sarah Moras, who's lost, I believe, 4 out of her last 5. So my question here is, do you think this line movement's justified?
Moras has definitely been in there with a better competition on paper, but I mean, she got smashed in pretty much all those fights. She had some success against Andrade back in the day, but I mean, for the most part, when you say Sarah Moras' name, all I think is the worst takedown defense in the history of the female game. I mean, she can't stuff a takedown to save her life. And this girl, Juju, kind of plays a similar game, but I feel like Juju's going to be a lot more fresher throughout the fight. I feel like it could be a sketchy grappling match early, but, when Moras gets tired, man, it looks ugly out there, man. I mean, her fight with Pudilova, there was chunks flying out through the air. I mean, she got smashed on. And then, her only win is by this little armbar she got against Evan Smith. And she lost to Talita Bernardo, who's a complete can. So I got Juja.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with Jojua as well. I think that Sarah Moras, even though I got to give her a lot of credit, she went out there her last fight and she took down Macy Chauzon, who's a top prospect, but at the end of the day, what'd she do with that takedown? I mean, a minute or two later, she got reversed and got smashed on. So, you can't really sit here and be like, oh, all she's got to do is take down Jojua once and then she's going to win. I just don't see it going down like that. And with Liana Jojua, one thing I really like about this girl, similar to how we were breaking down Ottman Azaitar, Liana Jojua is extremely tough, okay? She's very small for the weight class and, she hasn't fought the toughest level of competition, but she is tough as hell. And I really like the fact that, she was going out there and smashing all these girls in the first round, arm bars, heel hooks, the whole bit. But I need to know what happens when a fight goes the distance because, as you know, most women's fights tend to go the distance. What's going to happen? Well, Shaq, I didn't have a sample size in terms of a 3-round fight. I got to see an example in a 5-round fight against an undefeated Russian with a title on the line at Fight Nights Global. I got to see what she's really about. And let's just say that if this fight gets to that state where both ladies are fatigued and it comes to a battle of wills, Liana Jojua is going to tee off on Sarah Moras in a way where I don't think we'll ever see Sarah Moras fight inside the octagon ever again. So I really think what it comes down to is when Jojua gets on top of Sarah Moras, don't be getting caught in no arm bars. I know her last fight against Marina in Fight Nights Global, she was swimming through armbar attempts and she got out of every single one. I would have to imagine Sarah Moras at a little higher level. She's a UFC fighter. She's been fighting on this level. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I do think Liana Jojua is going to get out of all the attempts. Maybe even get a submission of her own, but at the end of the day, get the more dominant positions and win this fight. Be the tougher fighter. go out there, get her arm raised. So I'm going Liana Jojua for the victory. Next up in the featherweight division, we got the return of Zubaira Tukhugov. He's 18-4, and Lerone Murphy is 8-0. Currently, they got Zubaira Tukhugov minus 400. The comeback on Lerone Murphy is plus 325. Well, Shaq, Zubaira Tukhugov opened almost 6-1 here. He's currently 4-1, taking on the newcomer Lerone Murphy, who comes from the British scene. And this fight kind of reminds me of a fight a couple months back between Magomed Mustafayev and Rafael Fiziev. For whatever reason, everyone and their dog was on this kid, Rafael Fiziev. I don't know. Because the Russian's coming off a layoff, therefore we're going to fade him. Well, this Russian's coming off a layoff. You want to fade him too? I don't think so, Shaq. But I need to know your opinion first.
Yeah, this fight kind of reminds me of something similar to Leo Santos versus Stevie Ray. You got Leo Santos at the time coming off this huge layoff, and everyone was just assuming that he wasn't training, that he wasn't up to anything, and it turns out he was. And I feel like that's going to be the same case here. Look, Lerone Murphy, I'm sure he'll go on to get a win in the UFC eventually. But look, when guys out there on the England local scene, these guys that he's been fighting, where he has to resort to taking them down because he got rocked. That's all I needed to see. He's never fought anything like this before. Yeah, people are saying Zubaira is overrated. Like what? Overrated in a sense of a top 15, 20 because he lost a split decision to Hanato Moicano a couple years back. I mean, his fight with Felipe Nova should have been a 30-27. Look, Zubaira Tukhugov, is he a top 15 guy? Probably not, but I wouldn't go as far as say that he can't come out here and handle a guy that's, never fought anything like this. Yeah, the guy's a little big, but I mean, like I said, guys have put him in jobbers have put him in worse spots, and I feel like Zubaira's going to come out here, bounce around, do his thing, and eventually hit this guy with a left hook and spaz on him and knock him out in the first round. So I think Zubaira should be a little bit lined higher. I think he's one of the more safer favorites on the card, and I think this is another setup fight, kind of similar to Azaitar and Packalen.
Kind of similar to Magomed Mustafayev versus Rafael Fiziev. Look, just because the guy's coming off a 3-year layoff doesn't mean he hasn't been training, and doesn't mean that he's not been putting in work with top-level competition every single day, like Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I just think he's going to come out here and take care of biz. I mean, I saw Lerone Murphy in there with guys who are nowhere near UFC caliber, and he was getting rocked. He had to shoot for his life to get these takedowns and try to get that guy out of there. And you think he's going to come out here when he gets rocked by this left hook and take down a guy with the Sambo credentials of Zubaira Tukhugov, who, by the way, has better Sambo credentials than a lot of the Russians we see. It's just that for Zubaira Tukhugov, he chooses to stand and bang with most of the guys he fights. And someone might wiki cap this fight and say, he went to split decision with the male nurse, Felipe Nova. Okay, if you watch that fight, explain to me how it was a split decision, because I saw Zubaira Tukhugov give Felipe Nova a tour of the octagon. So I scored that 30-27, maybe even 30-26, so I don't see how that was a split decision at all. Look, bottom line here is that, am I picking Zubaira by finish or by decision? That's the real question here, and you know what, Shaq? I'm taking him by a left hook knockout. I got Zubaira Tukhugov for the win. Next up in the flyweight division, we got Andrea KGB Lee. She's 11-2, and Joanne JoJo 2.0 Calderwood is 13-4. Currently, they got Andrea Lee minus 225. The comeback on Joanne Calderwood is plus 185. Well, Shaq, I mean, I went on record many times and said the whole JoJo 2.0 thing was complete bullshit. But that being said, is this line a little bit wide here, or do you think it's justified with Andrea Lee being an over 2-1 favorite?
Yeah, JoJo kind of got outclassed her last fight against Katlyn Chookagian, who was about to be in this #1 contender fight. So she did have 3 rounds against, one of the top girls in the world. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of girls have quote-unquote good fights with Chookagian. So I'm not sure how much stock one should put into it. So her fight, I mean, look, we know the deal with Calderwood. She's got good striking. Her boxing's not as good as her kicking. She does cut open easily. That nose bleeds easily. And, Lee, on the other hand, I think she's good. I think she's a good prospect. I do think she might be a little bit overhyped just due to the fact that, her fights with Lee, not Lee, but Montana De La Rosa, Ashley Evans Smith, and Macedo, there's just moments in all those fights where you could see someone better could capitalize. The Macedo fight, she got caught with a big head kick, and of course she was able to bail herself out with the takedowns against someone like Macedo. Evan Smith, I mean, I don't really need to say much on that. She definitely won every round, but it wasn't like It wasn't like anything special in my opinion. And her fight with De La Rosa, I was there live. She stuffed the takedowns, landed the better boxing against someone whose boxing sucks. So Andrea Lee's done what she's supposed to do for the most part. I do edge her in this fight slightly, but I feel like it possibly has all the makings to be a close split decision type of fight. I feel like JoJo's a lot better than the girl she's fought, but also JoJo generally loses to that prospect. You know, she generally loses to the Calvillos, the Andrades, the Moroses. Lee might probably scrape it out, but I feel like it has all the potentials to be a fight where you're yelling at Lee on your TV, telling her to throw more because, for one, she's finally having an off night. So the longer you play her at lines like that, it'll be trouble. But I think she'll probably scrape out a decision win.
So even though I was saying the whole JoJo 2.0 thing is total bullshit, I still gotta admit that she made a lot of improvements in her last fight against Chukagian. Even though I scored the fight for Chukagian, I still didn't think that Joanne looked that bad. Whereas in past fights, when she's gotten that step up in competition, she's gotten straight blown out the water. I mean, I know you remember that fight against Andrade. I know you remember that fight against Moras, who wasn't even a step up in competition. Joanne was a huge favorite, but hey, she got blown out in that first round. Even back in Scotland against Cynthia Calvillo, where it's like, hey, you know, just go out here and don't get choked out and you win. Nope, you lost. So it's one of those things where, you know, I do think that now that she moved up in weight class, it's definitely going to aid her a little bit. And I kind of felt like the opening line was more accurate in this spot for how I feel this fight's going to go down. You know, minus 165 for Lee. Okay, you know, I understand that. Slight lean on Lee. But here at almost 2-1, you're telling me she's going to come out here and put on a show. And bro, we saw her last fight in Greenville against De La Rosa, and there were a lot of sketchy moments in that fight where we're like, man, someone better can definitely capitalize. Well, this is someone better. Now the question is, are they going to capitalize? I don't know, but I think the number might be on point to take a shot here. So I'm going to go with Joanne Calderwood via split decision. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Mairbek Taisumov. He's 27-5, and Carlos Diego Ferreira is 15-2. Currently, they got Mairbek Taisumov minus 270. The comeback on Diego Ferreira is plus 230. Well, Shaq, you know we've been really high on both of these guys, especially Diego Ferreira. He's made us a lot of money. I mean, I know everyone remembers those plus 265 odds against Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Also that time when he went out there and starched Gordon as well. But my question here is, man, do you think he has what it takes to beat Mairbek Taisumov? Because I have a feeling, Shaq, the winner of this fight is getting a lightweight ranking.
Taisumov has kind of been held back due to the Visha issue. So, I mean, to be honest, I feel like this is a guy that, you know, he's probably top 15, but due to this visa issues, he hasn't been able to make that typical U.S. debut against one of these U.S. On their way out lightweights that some of these guys typically get. So it's unfortunate, but hey, he's fine. Now they're bringing the show to him, to, you know, his territory. So we'll see how he does. Now, I love all the improvements that Carlos Diego's made since he got knocked out by Dustin Poirier. I mean, back then his stand-up was definitely a little bit raw. He definitely charging recklessly, and he paid for it in that fight. And ever since then, man, he's come back and he's made as much improvements as he possibly could. He fought OAM, who was the top prospect at the time. Although he did beat OAM's ass, he definitely got wobbled in that fight once. You know, OAM did wobble him with an uppercut. His fight after that against Jared Gordon was a wipeout. He tied his hands behind his back and pounded his head in. But his fight after that with Kyle Nelson's a 45er, and look, Kyle Nelson hits hard, but he hurt Diego to the body, and Diego was able to survive due to his jiu-jitsu. His jiu-jitsu will save him out of a lot of things. And then his fight with Rustam Khabib, look, I mean, him winning that fight, you know, could put a lot of stock into it. It's definitely a good win over a guy like Rustam, who was on a, you know, I think 5-6 fight winning streak at the time. But he had one of the sketchiest 5-6 fight winning streaks, you know, in the history of the sport. I mean, he almost got knocked out by Wade. He got fully mounted by Buscapé in Germany. He arguably lost to Des Green. He, you know, had the shitty fight with Cajun Johnson. I mean, Rustam Khabib was showing all the signs of a faded old Russian. I don't think Taisumov's showing those signs. I feel like as far as how they match up on the feet, I feel like Taisumov's way too fast for Carlos Diego Ferreira. And I said I like all the improvements he's making, but this is just a completely different level Mairbek Taisumov, I mean, when you look at his last fight with Green, he missed weight by 6 pounds. He honestly, that was probably, I don't want to say the worst he's ever looked. It was just the sluggish he's ever been. And he still beat Dez's ass for 3 rounds. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the talent level on this guy is definitely top, maybe even top 10 worthy. And I feel like as long as he comes in shape here, as long as he, makes weight, as long as he does his job, not to mention that Carlos Diego's also been having some weight issues in his fights as well. But as long as Taisumov makes weight, the speed advantage is too much to overcome for Diego. And I feel like Taisumov's takedown defense is too good. I mean, I feel like Carlos Diego might have a very tough night. The only way I can see him win this fight is if Taisumov slips on a banana pill and happens to get his back taken. So I got to go with Taisumov by first round knockout. I think the counter right hand's going to be there. I feel like Carlos Diego is just slightly too slow, just a little bit too hittable for guys like Taisumov, but I respect the run that he's been on, and I think that as long as he stays, mentally in it, he can continue that run after this fight, but I got to go with Taisumov by first round knockout.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both of these guys. It's really cool to see a matchup between two top 20 guys fighting for a top 15 spot, because I truly believe the winner of this fight is going to come out here, get that ranking, and then go on to do some big things, because both these guys are on big win streaks. Both these guys have been getting impressive finishes, and in their last fights where they both actually missed weight, Shaq, and they both went out there and won decisions, I was really impressed too, man. So I can't wait for this fight. On paper, you can give me the whole striker versus grappler stuff and, this and that. But the reality here is Mairbek Taisumov actually has a wrestling background. And Diego Ferreira, even though he's a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he's been favoring his stand-up his whole UFC career. I mean, don't get me wrong. When he drops guys, he'll choke them out or pound them out. Or when guys shoot takedowns on him, he'll reverse the position, take their back, and stuff like that. But you don't often see Diego Ferreira going out there and establishing takedowns of his own. And I think that's going to be his undoing in this fight, man, because against a guy like Mairbek Taisumov, who has the kind of takedown defense he has, I mean, he's a serious athlete. That explosion, those hips, man, it's something serious. So I think even if Diego was trying to go out there and establish takedowns, I think Mairbek would stuff him. But the thing is, Diego's got a lot of pride. Diego's a badass. Diego likes to stand and bang until one man falls. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here, Shaq. I think they are going to stand and bang until one man falls. I think Mairbek Taisumov is going to land the knockout blow here. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got Curtis Razor Blades. He's 11-2, and Shamil Abdurakhimov is 20-4. Currently, they got Curtis Blades minus 500. The comeback on Shamil Abdurakhimov is plus 400. Well, Shaq, this is the only Av on the whole card that's a huge underdog. He's plus 400 right now at the betting window. I mean, Shamil's coming off the best performance of his career against Marcin Tybura. Went out there and put him away. Is that enough to take this big step up in competition, crack the top 5 of the rankings, and beat Curtis Blades?
Curtis Blades has pretty much solidified himself as a top 3-4 heavyweight in the game today. We know that he's up there as far as one of the best wrestlers in the division. And his last fight against Big Titties, I mean, he put it on him, man. And Blades, it just seems like he can't get over the Francis Ngannou hurdle.
my boy Big Titty had to get breast reduction after that fight.
I like Blades' wrestling. That'll pretty much bail him out of most of his fights. But on the feet, I feel like not much has really changed. Although it's gotten better, I just feel like he's one of those guys that, I don't want to say he'll never get truly comfortable on the feet, but I think he'll just always hide behind it, you know what I'm saying? So I think that this fight with Shamil's been looking a lot better fight to fight, man. I've been keeping my eye on Shamil for the last year. I've been seeing the improvements he's been putting in. I like the way he passes Arlovsky test, but at the same time, Shamil has had his sketchy moments when it's come to the wrestling, whether it be Tim Johnson, whether it be Andrea Arlovsky. So I do have to favor Blades, but man, heavyweight division plus 400 of in Muslim territory, I would not be shocked if Shamil landed a heavyweight lucky punch and knocked him out. So I'm gonna go with Blades, but betting perspective, Shamil or pass.
So obviously Shamil is on the best run of his entire career, because I know you remember that fight against Chase Sherman, and the pre-fight talk, Sherman was talking about how I got to fight the most boring guy in the heavyweight division. You remember that? And then Shamil went out there and knocked him out in under 2 minutes. So much for being the most boring heavyweight. Next fight goes out there, beats Arlovsky, but we got to mention Arlovsky did take him down twice in that fight, Shaq. Next fight against Tybura, performance of his career, knocks Tybura out. Beautiful job. Now you got this step up in competition, Shamil. How are you going to deal with it? Well, in my opinion, for Shamil to win this fight, Curtis Blaydes needs to come out here and try to test his stand-up. Because even though only Francis Ngannou has gone out there and beat Curtis Blaydes, I've seen moments in other fights where, you know, he might be a little chinny, okay? Not to the point where you touch him one time, the fight will be over shortly after. But I'm just saying, if he tests his stand-up here against Shamil, look, 4-ounce gloves, these guys are heavyweights. Shamil's got a puncher's chance if Blaydes decides to test his stand-up. That being said, you look at what the numbers say in terms of the grappling, and Blaydes is out here. He averages close to 7 takedowns per 15 minutes. I mean, that's pretty fucking good, Shaq. You know what I'm saying, man? And I think that if he comes out here, doesn't worry about this fight being on pay-per-view, doesn't worry about, you know, the Shamil favorite crowd, you know, booing if you go out there and hump his leg. As long as he doesn't worry about any of that bullshit, don't worry about Dana White trashing you because you're going to come out here and impregnate a man on live TV, you know, make him take Plan B the next day. As long as Curtis Blaydes doesn't give a shit what no one's talking about, I think he comes out here and humps Shamil for 3 straight rounds, maybe even gets a ground and pound TKO. I'm going Curtis Blaydes here for the win. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Islam Makhachev. He's 17-1. And Davi Hamosh is 10-2. Currently, they got Islam Makhachev minus 345. The comeback on Davi Hamosh is plus 285. Well, Shaq, Davi Hamosh has made us a lot of money in his UFC career. I mean, I know you remember that max bet against Chris Gritzmacher. The only thing is, man, he ain't fighting the Chris Gritzmachers or the John Gunthers anymore or the Austin Hubbards. Now he's fighting Islam Makhachev. But do you think with those Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials and his UFC experience that he has what it takes to come out here, not just beat Islam Makhachev, but go out there and take his top 15 spot?
This is going to be a tough fight for Davi, just due to the fact that Islam doesn't really give you much to go off of. You know, he keeps it really safe in his fights. He, you know, honestly doesn't really engage that much. He just looks to grab them singles and gets that clinch position and, you know, either takes you down and kills time or keeps you in that clinch. But, you know, we've seen a couple fights where he's been fighting these old guys like T-Bow and Cajun Johnson where he can get these quick little finishes. I do think Davi's probably one of the more dangerous, well-rounded guys that he's fought in a while, considering his last few opponents being, you know, Sarukian, T-Bow, and Cajun Johnson. But Davi has also been fighting guys like Gritzmacher, John Gunther, Austin Hubbard, guys that, you know, can't even breathe. Islam's there. So Islam, as long as he keeps it safe, he's going to win a decision. You know, I know he ain't losing no decision in Abu Dhabi to Davi Ramos. I don't know how Davi's going to possibly find a way to submit him, but I will say Chris Wade is the only guy that I've seen have any type of success, and Chris Wade did sweep him like 3 times, so we'll see what Davi can do, but I got to go with Islam. I just think Davi's going to maybe just make bad decisions here, maybe flop to his back when he shouldn't. I just think it's going to be a lackluster decision for Islam.
Man, I'm really pumped about this fight because obviously Davi Hamosh, like we mentioned, got so much respect for the guy. And what can you say about Islam Makhachev? Really made tons of improvements. I mean, I know you guys remember that Adriano Martins fight. Well, since that point, you see the kind of win streak he's on. And I was super impressed with that fight against Arman Sarukian. I know that kid's really green. I know he's really young. And I know people made a really big deal about that fight, but honestly, man, you should make a big deal about it because that kid Arman Sarukian was so dominant with his takedowns on his regional footage. Even his fight after Islam against the OAM. I mean, when this guy wants to take you down, chances are he's going to take you down. Well, that wasn't the case with Islam Makhachev, man. You saw those scrambles throughout that fight, especially in that first round. Some beautiful stuff, man. And with Davi Hamosh, even though I did see some openings in the Islam versus Sarukian fight for Davi to take the back, man, I'm not sure if those are going to present themselves here, kind of like they did in that fight where it was, you know, 2 wrestlers. Here it's a wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu guy. So I think that Islam might come out here with a different game plan, but it's just one of those things where you know how dangerous Davi Hamosh is. You know that he does throw big bombs on the feet, no doubt about it. And his jiu-jitsu is world-class, some of the best in the entire sport. So, you know, if Islam Makhachev hasn't been training his jiu-jitsu, if he hasn't been grappling every day with Khabib and Deron Wynn and Daniel Cormier and all these guys, then, you know, you give up your back to Davi Hamosh. I don't care who you are. You could get choked out. And I see a lot of people saying that Davi Hamosh only path to victory is a finish. And I understand where they're coming from, but my whole argument against that was, I mean, you saw his last fight against Austin Hubbard. Not to compare Hubbard to Makhachev, not even close. I'm just saying if I were to make an argument for Davi Hamosh winning a decision, it would be, well, probably via back control, right? Take his back, don't let him turn in, seal off the rounds that way. But at the end of the day, what I think is going to be the difference here is that Islam Makhachev seems like he's further along in his career than Davi Hamosh. I think Davi Hamosh has a very bright career, man. I think he's got a bright future. I think that he's a very talented guy, and I don't think that he's sub or bust, man. I think the guy comes out here, throws big bombs. I think he's trying to round out his game, mixes in takedowns. He's trying to be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. But at this point in time, I just think that Islam Makhachev has fought the tougher level of competition. He's just more experienced, simply put. So I think he goes out here and wins the decision against Davi Hamosh. Next up in the lightweight division, we got the co-main event of the evening. It's a rematch, Shaq, between Edson Barboza, he's 20-7, and Paul the Irish Dragon Felder is 16-4. Currently, they got Edson Barboza -150. The comeback on Paul Felder is +130. Well, Shaq, the first time they fought, ironically enough, I actually bet on Paul Felder in that spot as an underdog. And the first round, it looked like things were going according to plan. He shut his eye with that left hook. And then Edson Barboza had his signature spin kick to the dick. Paul Felder never recovered. He lost the next 2 rounds. Now that they rematch in Abu Dhabi, who do you think wins the rematch here?
Yeah, this is a great matchup, a good rematch. The first fight, Edson was able to land the harder strikes for 2 of the 3 rounds. And, man, a lot has changed since that fight. I mean, the journeys that both of them, and especially Felder, have been on since then is kind of crazy. That was Felder's 3rd UFC fight, a fight that he probably, he was the hot prospect at the time, but he just quite wasn't ready. He wasn't really that far off. It's just little details, and it seems like it's taken him a long time to kind of start improving on those little details, man. So after that fight, he lost to Ross Pearson. He lost to Trinaldo. He struggled with Josh Berkman. He lost 2 rounds to Cruikshank, and then came back to win the 3rd. I mean, Felder has been on quite the journey. Now he's commentating fights, and I definitely see a big change since he went to Rufus Sport. Just kind of in his morale, man. Not it just seems like they have a really good connection. It seems I know Felder was hopping gym from gym a lot early on in his career, but I definitely don't think he will be hopping gyms from now on. I definitely think he's going to be at Rufus Sport. And Edson Barboza, on the other hand, he's at ATT now. And Edson, one of the better lightweights of all time. Some of the flashiest KOs in the history of the sport. The Dariush KO, the Terry Adam KO, the leg kick TKOs, the hooker knockout. I mean, the guy is definitely brought some of the best excitement in the history of the sport. But when you look at his career lately, I think there's a very good chance that it's going to start going downhill. I mean, he had the fight with Khabib, and there's no shame in losing to Khabib. There's no shame in that. But the damage happened, and it was severe damage. I mean, he got smashed on for 15 minutes badly, and then he came back in the main event against Kevin Lee and got smashed on even worse. I mean, several free shots to his face. And then he fought Hooker, and Hooker underestimated him because the 2 fights prior, and he thought it was a cakewalk in the bag, and he started talking a little bit prematurely. And Hooker really, I wouldn't say he has the that style as those 2, but I just feel like Hooker went into that fight with a bad mindset. If he was the favorite in that fight, he never beat anything like that before. It paid, and then he got matched up with Justin Gaethje, who at the time people still weren't necessarily sold on Justin. He was coming off the 2 losses, and then the KO against Vic. People were still saying, what if Edson touches his chin? But the fact that the fight was pretty much wrapped up in less than a couple minutes was a good sign to me that I feel like Edson Barboza is probably going to go on the decline here. Whenever you see Edson start swinging like that, that's a sign that he's given up. Now, Paul Felder doesn't necessarily apply that type of pressure, but I just like what I'm seeing, the gradual improvements out of Paul, man. I just feel like his size is different now. His confidence is different. Back in the day, I feel like he would have probably overthought this fight and just beat himself up. As we're now, he knows that he can clear that top 10 hurdle in his career. I feel like he's known that this fight's been on the horizons. I think he comes out here, puts pressure on Edson Barboza. I feel like he's a lot more of a threat technically to Edson than a lot more other guys. And I feel like Edson's going to have to keep that in mind. And I just don't think he has the chin to keep it together for 15 minutes. I feel like the only way he can win is by knockout. And I feel like Paul Felder has one of the better chins. Say the only way he can win by his knockout. I feel like, a couple years ago he could have kept it together to win a decision, but the guy just cannot hold his ground. He gets backed up very easily, and I think that's going to happen here. I feel like Felder's got the better ground game. I feel like there's a lot of things trending for Felder and a lot of things not trending for Edson Barboza, so I'm going to go with Paul Felder.
So, man, in Edson Barboza's last 4 fights, he's eaten over 300 head strikes. That's kind of alarming. I mean, it's to the point where when you look at this guy's numbers, he got beaten up so badly in 3 of his last 4 fights that now his strikes landed to strikes absorbed ratio is negative. So if that's not a sign of a decline, I don't know what is. And the guy already had a very questionable chin. I mean, I don't got to remind you guys about that time that Jamie Varner knocked him out. I don't got to remind you about that time that Donald Cerrone dropped him with a jab, etc., etc. And then the beatdowns against Khabib and Kevin Lee, we can sit here and say, well, Paul Felder doesn't shoot takedowns. That's not going to happen. And I agree, he doesn't shoot takedowns. But if you think that, close to 300 strikes absorbed to the head aren't going to diminish his chin even more and his confidence, then I don't know what you're thinking, man. These are human beings we're talking about. And I just don't see how Edson Barboza keeps maintaining that top 8. It used to be top 5, right, Shaq? Now it's top 8. Then it's going to be top 10. Then it's going to be top 15. Then he's going to be unranked. So I just don't see how he's going to maintain this spot that much longer. And, the Hooker fight, we can talk about that. Great performance. But, Hooker was pulling a stunt before that fight even started. Hooker was doing what every young fighter does when they get that big step up. They think the guy's on his way out. They start talking a lot. Then they get destroyed. You know what I mean? It happened to my boy Vic against Gaethje. Sometimes when these guys start talking a little bit, look, it happened to Alex Perez against Joseph Benavidez. When these young fighters get that big step up in competition, and the step up in competition is coming off a devastating loss, the young prospect starts to run their mouth a little bit, and then they get in big trouble. And I think that's what happened there to Hooker. But then that next fight against Gaethje, I know it's Gaethje, but look, man. It wasn't one of those Gaethje back and forth wars, life and death. It was just Gaethje just ran him over in the first round like it was nothing. I mean, couple calf kicks to the guy who's allegedly supposed to be the best kicker in the game. Well, it's Gaethje who's going out there and calf kicking Edson Barboza. And then when it was time to go upstairs, he doubled up on that right hook, put him to sleep, game, set, match. We can sit here and talk about how, but Barboza got a call that his wife was going into labor a couple minutes before the fight. Okay, I respect Edson for taking a fight, during those circumstances, all that stuff. But guys, if you think that's why he got knocked out, I don't know what to say. I mean, he got knocked out because he's got no chin and because Gaethje hits really hard. Now we're taking it a step further to Paul Felder. And, there's things I can criticize Felder for. I wish he'd throw more. I wish that, he wouldn't make facial expressions when he gets hit. But, man, he's gotten better about that stuff, When he fought Edson the first time, even when he fought Ross Pearson, if that guy was rematching Edson, I'm not convinced that guy wins. But since that point, man, he's definitely matured. He's definitely been through the ups and downs. And now he got over a hurdle where we thought he was never going to get over, So when he knocked out Danny Castillo, I kind of jumped the gun, kind of like everyone else did. And I thought, oh, man, I've never seen a performance like that before. This guy's going to be a future world champion, this and that. Goes out there against Edson Barboza. He's an underdog. I'm like, oh, man, we're going to go out there, beat this guy, close his eye with the first left hook. Then, the nut punt. We can say that was a big factor or it wasn't. But he lost the next 2 rounds, then loses the next fight to Ross Pearson. So I kind of gave up on Felder for a little bit. Had a couple, unspirited fights with Berkman and Crookshank. We were kind of like, man, maybe we're wrong about Felder. Maybe he was a hype job the whole time. But, man, since that point, he's been putting in work at 155 pounds. The knockouts that he's been getting, that fight against Charles DuBronx, when Charles DuBronx ran him through the submission series, and Paul Felder survived something that many people don't, got on top of him, pounded him out. The fight with Mike Perry, up a weight class at 170, breaks his arm in the first round, keeps fighting the next 2. And then against James Vick, who was ranked number 10 in the world at the time, went out there, ate a lot of shots that would have put other men down. Like, those straight rights were landing really hard. And not only that, man, dealt with a big injury in that 3rd round and didn't quit. So I'm very impressed with the progression of Paul Felder. Now it's about, we know he's not a big pressure guy, and pressure is historically Edson's downfall. We know they are going to stand and trade a little bit, so that could give Edson a path to victory. But I just think that when Felder lands on that chin, man, you can only have 9 lives for so long. You know what I'm saying, man? And I think we're going to be reminded that this guy is really chinny. I think it's going to be a left hook knockout, man. So I'm going Paul Felder here. Inside the distance, I think he knocks out Edson Barboza, wins the rematch, gets the biggest win of his career. breaks that top 8 and gets a big fight afterwards. Main event of the evening for the lightweight title. We got Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov. He's 27-0. And Dustin the Diamond Poirier is 25-5. Currently, they got Khabib Nurmagomedov minus 450. The comeback on Dustin Poirier is plus 360. Well, Shaq, Khabib was only about, a minus 150 to minus 170 favorite against Conor McGregor. Here against Dustin the Diamond, who's been looking better than he ever has, he's minus 450. Now, is Khabib so damn dominant that this line is justified, or is it one of these cases where if you see a 360 next to a fighter of the caliber of Dustin Poirier's name, you got to take it automatically? What's your thought?
Khabib Nurmagomedov is, man, he's dominant, and the guy barely loses rounds. But when I look at his last few fights, in all due respect, I mean, he went out there and dominated these guys the way you're supposed to. Conor McGregor was definitely, he treated him accordingly, but truly I believe that Conor McGregor mentally and physically was not in condition to fight, especially mentally. I mean, just look at that press conference and half the shit the guy's saying. I mean, guys, we all know that Floyd Mayweather changed this guy's life for the worse. Now he's on a 2-year coke binge. Now he's got now he's punching old guys in bars. Now he's got,
and not knocking them out.
and not knocking them out. Now he's got, maybe babies on the side. Now he's got
rape allegations.
He's got sexual assault allegations. I mean, the guy is on a straight path for Irish BJ Penn, but hey, at least Khabib went out there, got on that single, and beat his ass, man. So it seems like Khabib really comes out with his pace early seems to just overwhelm guys like akin to, McGregor, and he usually gets off to a good 2-round start where he's built up a lead so wide, and then the third round is kind of when he starts to get a little bit fatigued, and that's when he kind of goes to his boxing, and his boxing's real good too, man. His boxing's sharp as hell, and he outboxed Ala Akinta, he dropped Conor McGregor, so man, Khabib is a complete fighter 100%, and now his opponent, Dustin Poirier, I mean, this is a guy where when he left the featherweight division, he had the most finishes, he had the most wins, and since he's been up at lightweight, he's continued the same. I mean, this guy, Dustin Poirier, is the definition of violence. I mean, the knockout wins over Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje. I mean, if this guy wobbles you, don't be shocked if he closes the show. And just the fights that he's been through mentally, at the time, the Gaethje fight, although Gaethje was coming off a loss, I feel like in terms of caliber of fighter, Gaethje's got a lot of potential. And the fact that Dustin Poirier got through that fight showed that mentally he's going places, and it's gotten better progressively with the wins over Holloway now, a guy who was on a 13-fight win streak who some people were saying was unbeatable and was never going to lose. So, I feel like, it's definitely an uphill battle with the wrestling, but I got Dustin Poirier on the feet against any man in the world at 155 pounds. I truly believe if he touches any man on the chin at 155 pounds, that they will feel it, that they will stumble, that they will wobble. And like I said, if that happens, don't be shocked if he closes the show. Now, Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's got the great cardio. He's able to just keep going. But like I said, it seems like he likes to go to his boxing a lot more in these fights in the late rounds. And on fight night, I feel like Dustin Poirier is going to be a lot heavier. I feel like it's going to take a little bit more energy to hold Dustin Poirier down. He's not going to be mentally deterred like Ala Akinta, who only had 1 day to train, and Conor McGregor. So there is value on Dustin. I got a lot of respect for Khabib, and I'll go ahead and say he's probably, most likely, probably going to pull out the win, but I got to go with Dustin Poirier, paid in full. I am a little biased, but I think he sparked some unconscious in the first round.
Man, so this is fucking amazing that Dustin Poirier has made it all the way to an undisputed title shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov, because Dustin Poirier has been one of our favorite fighters for the longest time, not just because he's a great guy, but because look at the way he fights, man. Tell me a more exciting fighter than Dustin Poirier. Well, Justin Gaethje. Yeah, Dustin Poirier knocked out Justin Gaethje, so don't even try me on that. And let's talk about this matchup. So I'm going to say all the good things about Khabib in a second, but let me talk about the plus 360 underdog first. So, I've been hearing about how Dustin Poirier has never fought a guy that brings tremendous pressure. Oh, really? What do you call Justin Gaethje? You know what I'm saying? And not only that, I get it, that was a stand-up fight, not a grappling match. So, It's a different kind of pressure, no doubt about it. But to sit here and act like he hasn't fought a guy that brings serious pressure is complete horseshit, because Justin Gaethje brings some of the best pressure in the history of the sport. So he knocked that guy out. Now, okay, let's address the fact that it's not going to be stand-up pressure this time. It's going to be, constant shooting at the legs. And we haven't really seen Dustin in there with too many wrestlers. Now, back to Gaethje. He is a D1 wrestler. I mean, if you know about Arizona, you know about Justin Gaethje. But Justin likes to stand with everyone he fights. So should we just kind of act like, he didn't fight a D1 wrestler there? Okay, that being said, we haven't really seen Dustin have to get back up from bottom too much. And when we have seen it against Eddie Alvarez, I mean, he kind of gives up some bad spots. And, it's one of those things where Khabib might smash him if he gets on top of him. When Khabib gets on top of these dudes, he throws that ground and pound from the heavens, man. So, it's one of those things. If that happens to you, you can't be surprised. That's just what Khabib does. But I also agree with you when you talk about this is one of the toughest guys that Khabib has ever fought. And I agree with that. Since he fought Rafael Dos Anjos back in 2014, I do think this is the toughest guy he's fought. And I know someone's going to talk about, well, McGregor and Johnson both knocked out Poirier. And you're 100% right, but they didn't knock out this version of Poirier. They didn't knock out championship caliber Poirier. They knocked out a Poirier who was figuring things out. And much respect to them, they did that. But the Poirier we see today, in my opinion, finishes both Michael Johnson and Conor McGregor, because I really feel like these last few fights, we've been seeing this guy come into his own. He's always been a great fighter. He's always been perennial top 10, perennial top 5. But now we're seeing him move up to top 3, top 2. You know what I'm saying? That's a hump he was never able to get over in his earlier career that he's getting over now. And I just also felt like the way he was landing his shots in that second Max Holloway fight, that's the hardest I've ever seen Poirier throw. But more importantly than that, Shaq, it's the most accurate. It's the most precise. He just looked the best he's ever looked physically, the way he was throwing, his confidence. Max Holloway is a tough out. I don't care who you are. And Dustin overcame everything. So I do think that while the stand-up portion is going on, that Dustin starts to get off on some strikes. When you talk about that Dustin Poirier flurry, when he hurts his opponent and then he starts teeing off on those 20 to 30 strike combinations, it's some of the most beautiful finishes you've ever seen. But we got to talk about Khabib's stand-up, which I think is very underrated. So a lot of people talk about how Khabib, he only has his grappling, his wrestling, his stand-up is trash. And I completely disagree. Let me explain to you what I mean. You watch that fight against Ali Quinta, and let me know whose head was getting popped back repeatedly with jabs. Let me know whose face was completely bloody from all those jabs. I mean, Khabib went out there. He was putting on a jab clinic against Ali Quinta. That was a very dominant fight. I was very impressed with that performance. I know people shit on that fight. I don't know why. Maybe because Mitch Clark finished the guy and Khabib didn't, but so what? Khabib destroyed him in a way where, he ran through him, man. He beat him in every facet of the game. Next fight against Conor McGregor, goes out there, and he doesn't just hump Conor McGregor's leg, Shaq. He goes out there and drops Conor McGregor. So I don't think Khabib's stand-up sucks at all, man. I think Khabib's actually got some really good stand-up, very underrated, and he's very technical with his boxing in terms of he's not out here spinning. He's not out here doing stupid shit. Likes to set up his jab to his two. I like the shit Khabib does on the feet. But that being said, man, if he tries to test it for too long against Poirier, like I said, I don't care who you are, because I think Max Holloway is an unbelievable stand-up fighter too. But when you start getting cracked by a guy like Dustin Poirier, shit tends to change, man. You don't react the same. I know Max Holloway's got that Hawaiian chin. He could take the whooping for 5 straight rounds, but Khabib is going to have to go to that grappling. And I do think that he gets Dustin down at some points. It's just how much damage is he able to get off until Dustin's able to either, start the next round on the feet or get back up and then land some damage of his own. So, it's one of those things like, yeah, I'd lean Khabib for the obvious reasons. But again, when you got a number like this next to a guy like Dustin Poirier, this is a dog or pass situation. And who am I rooting for? Of course I'm rooting for Dustin Poirier. Of course I want Dustin Poirier to go out there and knock out Khabib Nurmagomedov. Will it happen? I don't know. That's why we tune in to watch the fight. And sometimes when you bet on these fights, it's not about who you think's going to win. It's about the number. And that number on Dustin Poirier, I haven't seen a number like that on Dustin Poirier in near a decade, man. So we'll see what happens. I'm rooting for Poirier. I lean Khabib. But hopefully Poirier goes out there and knocks him out. Now, Shaq, we got to let them know that they can get our bets at bestfightpicks.com. Make sure you use the promo code FORTUNE to save 10% off any VIP package. Thanks to my boy Tyrell Fortune, Bellator's #1 heavyweight prospect, going out there with that finish. He's our new sponsored athlete, and use the promo code FORTUNE to save 10% off any VIP package. And now we got to hit up Big Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, it's going down this Saturday in Abu Dhabi. Khabib versus Dustin Poirier. How's it going, man?
Hey, not too bad. Looking forward to that fight for sure. Another morning card. Not sure how I feel about a pay-per-view being during the morning, but we got 50K up top for DraftKings. So anytime I can have 50K available, I don't care if it's a 10 a.m. card or a 10 p.m. card. I'm ready to get that 50K.
Well, it's the second title fight in a row, but this time the undisputed lightweight title is on the line. You got Khabib, the 27-0 undefeated champion, taking on Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And it's really interesting from a DraftKings perspective because obviously, you know, Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's been DraftKings gold in the past. You got to pay up for him, but it's not often you get 6,900 on a guy like Dustin Poirier. So my question is obviously your perspective on the fight, but what I really want to know is who do you think is going to be the more popular play this week?
Khabib for both. I think Khabib's going to be the most popular play of the week. Everybody's going to be throwing him in just because he is DraftKings gold. He's pretty much a lock for 100 points when he fights. If he wins, that is, of course. And this is a solid matchup for him. As long as he doesn't get knocked out, he should get this win. He should get a lot of takedowns. He averages 111 points just throughout his UFC career, and he hasn't scored under 100 since the Dos Anjos fight. And he had 96 then. He had 94 against Healy. And those are 3-round fights. Now he's working with 5 rounds every single time, so he's going to be good for 100 plus if he wins. But he's also going to be owned by half the field. So if you're trying to get any leverage on him, you're going to have to go real heavy with your lineups, or even like an all-in type of thing. I'm not against that, but I don't have the balls for that. I'll probably go like maybe 70-30, something like that, in favor of Khabib. But this is pretty much an all-in fight because there's no way Dustin doesn't end up on the optimal lineup if he does win. Because if he wins, it's going to be a knockout, and that'll probably score a lot of points. It really doesn't even matter what round it comes in. He'll be on that optimal. And I'll be rooting for Dustin. I'm a huge Dustin fan. I would love to see him get this win. I just think Khabib's too good. And 9,300, man, if he didn't pay that off, I'd be shocked, and I think he is going to be on the optimal lineup. So I do like Khabib here. I probably will stack this fight in cash just to lock in, both fighters. I got the win. I'll get the 100 plus. And if Poirier does pull off the upset, I'll probably sweep my cash game. So all in on this fight. But yeah, give me Khabib. He's just too good.
Co-main event of the evening, you got the rematch between Edson Barboza and Paul Felder. And Kyle, when they met 4.5 years ago, man, it was a very close fight. But now it seems like they're in two different points of their careers. Do you think Paul Felder has done enough to catch up to Edson Barboza here?
No, I don't think he has, but it's definitely close. And I'm definitely not against using Felder. If you're picking Felder, go ahead and use him. I don't love a whole lot of dogs on this card, so I'm sure I'm going to have a good amount of Felder lineups just in case he does come through. And if he does, it's a good chance that it could be a knockout. Barboza's taken a lot of damage since their first fight. But really, if I could get a judge on ownership, like if I knew this fight would be in most people's lineups, either way, I would just fade it because in their first fight, Barboza only scored 62 points in a win, and Felder had, I believe, 23 in a loss. So if he got the win, it'd be 53. I'm not interested in that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to pay 7,700 or 8,500 for those kind of scores. I want to finish here. And that was a fight of the night, too. So it's not like we're going to have twice as much action in this fight. We're not going to see any takedowns really unless they're from Felder's side. So I think maybe the play is to just fade this fight and let everybody else get the ownership since it is the co-main event. Both are big names. It should be pretty popular. I don't really want to throw these guys in a whole lot of my lineups to get leverage over that, so I might just fade it and hope that it's similar to the first fight. But I am going to take Barboza to get the win.
So also in the lightweight division, you got Islam Makhachev taking on Davi Hamosh. And man, it's an incredible fight. Obviously, Islam's a top 15 guy already. I think Davi might be a future top 15 guy. His jiu-jitsu is second to none. Do you think he's ready at this point in his career to take such a big step up and get the win?
God, I don't think so. But this is a super interesting matchup because I mean, it's Makhachev's wrestling versus Ramos's BJJ unless they're stuck standing, and then I'm not sure what happens. I think Makhachev probably has the better overall striking, but Ramos has more power. So I do think we're mostly going to see a striking fight here, where I would prefer just to see the grappling play out, because I think that'd be fun. But I think Ramos is live here at 7K, and when he wins, he scores. So I'm not against using Ramos at all here. It's just hard to pick him over Makhachev. Makhachev's a beast himself, and I don't see Ramos getting takedowns on Makhachev. So I could see this being one where Makhachev wins a striking decision and only scores, like 60 points or something like that. So I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with this one, but I'm leaning towards a dog or pass kind of thing. If I'm making a small amount of lineups, I would rather just take that shot on Ramos at 7K, and that helps me pay up for Khabib and those other high-price favorites that we want in our lineups. But if you're getting Makhachev, you're going to be limited on how much Khabib you can get, and I would much rather have Khabib than Makhachev.
So speaking of 60 points, you got Shamil Abdurakhimov, who averages 60 points, taking on Curtis Blades. Now, I said earlier in my breakdown, because obviously you got a minus 500 line on Curtis Blades right now, right, Kyle? So we had to make some kind of case for how would Shamil win this fight. And the case I made was if Blades decides to come out here, test his stand-up, abandon the wrestling, that could give Shamil a path to victory. That being said, do you think he's going to do that? He's going to get back to that bread and butter, take this guy down, rinse and repeat?
Yeah, I think Blades is just a better fighter everywhere here. The only issue is $9,400. He's $100 more than Khabib. If I'm choosing between him and Khabib, I got to say Khabib's the better play. I think Khabib's the best play on the whole slate. So it's going to limit how much of those other 9K guys I can have. But I do like Blades here a lot. I think he can win anywhere. He can get a knockout on the feet, a knockout on the ground. He can get multiple takedowns just like Khabib. But yeah, you're right. There is a path to victory for Shamil, and that's a knockout. And if he can get that knockout, nobody's going to be on this guy. So I'm not against using him if you're chasing that 50K, but it's really that tournament only, or like maybe the mini max, something like that, where you can make a whole bunch of lineups, or like where most people are making, 150 lineups. If you're making like 2 or 3, you got to be different, and that's a way to do it. 6,800, a guy who could get a first round knockout, and if he does, I think he's a lock for the nuts. So I like the risk reward type of thing with Shamil. I just think he's got a tough fight ahead of him, and I don't see him pulling it out. I won't fully fade him though, just because I do plan on having a decent amount of Blades. So I want at least, one Shamil hedge lineup, because if he wins, I want my favorite Shamil lineup in there going for that 50K, because he's going to be probably 10% or less owned, and these big boys, anything can happen. So just a big tournament type of play is fine with me, but Blades is playable in all formats, and I do expect him to go out there and smash.
So, Kyle, opening up the pay-per-view, you got a fight between two guys who are on the cusp of being ranked in the top 15 in the most stacked division in the entire sport, lightweight. You got Mairbek Taisumov taking on Diego Ferreira. And I was telling Shaq, like I just mentioned, the winner of this fight is most likely getting a number by their name next Tuesday. The question is it going to be the knockout power of Taisumov or the third-degree black belt jiu-jitsu of Diego Ferreira?
Yeah, it's going to be a good fight to target. One I'm looking forward to. Ferreira's been scoring, like 120-plus points in 2 of his last 3 wins. I have a hard time seeing him do that against Taisumov, but if he can get this fight to the ground, maybe he can make it happen. I just think Taisumov's just too good. I think his wrestling defense will be able to keep this fight on the feet, and I don't see Ferreira catching him. I think Taisumov has a decent shot at a knockout here. So I'd rather just go ahead and pay the 9K for him. If he can make that knockout in the first round, then there's a good chance he is on that 50K lineup. But if it goes past that first round, I'll be sweating. And in his last fight against Des Green, he only scored 44 points in a win. So if he does that again, you're dead no matter what, even if your other 5 guys score well, because that's not even half his salary here at 9K. So it's definitely a risky guy. He's not going to be going out there looking for takedowns. We're strictly relying on the knockout with him. So I wouldn't go too heavy, but I am interested in him. And on a card where we're hurting for dogs, I'm not against taking some shots on Ferreira either, because he is a very solid fighter, and for him to be that cheap, it's just, you won't see that often. So I'll take a couple shots on him as well, but my preferred play is Taisumov.
Well, Kyle, that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. It's going down this Saturday in the afternoon in Abu Dhabi. They can follow you at Big Marley 3. Your bets and your write-ups are available at bestfightpicks.com. And now, Kyle, they can save 10% off your yearly package by using the promo code Big Marley at bestfightpicks.com.
That's right, man. This week only, though. We're going to take that away on Sunday, so you got to get it in before these fights. But if you're looking to join the team, hop on that yearly. You won't get a better price than this. This is the only time I'm going to be offering that. But yeah, just like he said, 10%. Go over there to Best Fight Picks. Let's get the picks this weekend, and we'll even throw in the DraftKings with it every week. So you won't find a deal better than that. Let's get it.
And Kyle Marley has been known to pay off those yearly packages in one event. Isn't that right, Kyle?
That's what I like to do. Yes, sir.
BestFightPicks.com. Use the promo code Big Marley to save 10% off Big Marley's yearly package. BestFightPicks.com. Follow him at Big Marley3. Kyle, good luck this weekend. We'll speak soon, my man.
Thanks, man. Good luck to you and everybody listening. Let's get it.
Well, Shaq, before we talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch, we got a couple fan questions that we got to answer here on Half the Battle. So, first up, Luke wants to know. He says, historically, strength of opponent is questionable for both of these guys, but do you think either Islam Makhachev or Mairbek Taisumov have the potential to be UFC lightweight champs in the future?
Lightweight champ. I mean, yeah, there's always potential. Now, how much potential? Yeah. I don't know. Like, if I had to guess if either of them will become UFC champion, I'd say no. But I think that both of them are both currently probably top 10, so I guess there would be some potential.
Yeah, I mean, they're both amazing fighters, but the thing here is that Mairbek's got those visa issues, so I think that it's kind of hard.
He's not gonna get an opportunity, most likely, in Islam. He just doesn't really sell like Khabib.
Yeah, so basically these guys got to keep winning in dominant fashion to get title shots. And, I mean, Taisumov's got to get these visa issues in order, so I'm going to say most likely not. Sam O'Brien wants to know who's a likely opponent for Khabib if he loses? Is it an auto rematch or not?
I think it's the auto rematch situation, yeah, if he loses.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say the same thing.
Unless it's, I mean, just because he's got the good manager, I'm sure there's an auto rematch. I think it's an auto rematch.
I mean, it's probably in the language in the contract. He probably has an auto rematch clause, so I would say so. My boy Kevin Goodson says, what the fuck is going on with the welterweight belt? Well, I think there's some stuff going on that they're not talking about, publicly.
Well, I think Covington and Usman is going to get announced soon, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think those guys are probably going to get announced soon. They're probably just in negotiations, but I also heard that they're trying to get Diaz versus Masvidal to be the main event and put the title fight as the co-main event. So we'll see what actually happens, but I do think that Colby and Kamaru are going to fight for the belt for sure. All right, Raul wants to know, how big a factor is the travel? Guys like Akhmedov versus Cummings, big edge to Omari, and will the local crowd strongly favor the Dagestani Muslim fighters? Hell yeah, they will. I mean, you've been seeing all this footage going on. You saw my boy Belal Muhammad wearing the robe. They're getting taken to these beautiful mosques, like definitely. So my boy Mac wants to know, he said it'd be awesome to hear me and Shaq take a minute and break down JDS dancing skills. So, did you see my boy JDS on Dancing with the Stars? Because he was out there killing it.
Yeah, I actually did see a clip of him dancing. My boy JDS, look, he can move, man. He couldn't move against Francis quite enough, but he can dance out there, man. I hope he gets voted on to the next round.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he went out there, put on a great performance. I thought he looked better than Chuck Liddell. I thought he definitely.
Does he dance better than Johnny Walker on the way to the cage?
Johnny Walker on Dancing with the Stars, he'd be over with, right? But look, JDS, he's doing his thing. I'm happy for him, and I hope to see him back on there. It looked like he was genuinely happy to be there. And I thought he fucking killed his dance routine, man. You could tell he'd been putting in work, been practicing that a lot, and it definitely paid off. So I hope he makes it to the next round as well. Dave wants to know, who has a better shot to beat Khabib? Poirier walking into the cage Saturday or McGregor when he walked in?
Poirier walking into the cage. McGregor is not mentally or physically in condition to fight. And when he comes back, I think it's going to go downhill unless they give him, like a bottom of the barrel, not bottom of the barrel, but unless they give him like a real setup fight, like a Pettis maybe. I don't know. Like, I mean, guys, have y'all not seen? He's showing all the signs of a fucking deranged cokehead on his way out. I mean, like I said, he's punching old men in bars.
Not
He's
knocking them out.
he's bringing up Vladimir Putin's name and Abdul Manap and Magomed in prison in Russia for embezzling money. His name's up at fucking press conferences, in which he knows he shouldn't be doing. Kadyrov as well. He's, allegedly got maybe babies out here. He's got a low-key sexual assault case. I mean, he's throwing dollies in buses. I mean, come on, guys. This guy's on his way out. Look, when you get $100 million and you're Irish, sometimes you start putting coke up your nose,
I mean, my whole thing with this is that I think the line that McGregor had should be the line that Poirier has. Plus 150, something like that. I mean, even plus 200, okay? But plus 360. I mean, McGregor looked like a fucking plus 500 dog out there. He got smoked in a way where, I mean, we ain't heard from him since. So I definitely think Poirier's got a better shot than McGregor had just because he's in a better mindset, man. I mean, not only does he have...
People have to remember, this guy came off a Floyd fight in which he's an 0-0 boxer, and he fought a 50-0 boxer. Like one of the greatest boxers of all time. That's
greatest boxer of all time.
Taking one of the... You said what?
The greatest boxer of all time.
The greatest boxer of all time. That's like taking a Emmy and telling him to go fight Floyd. He's going to get fucked up for the rest of his life, guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you don't come back from that kind of damage. 0-0 versus 50-0. Like, come on, that was life-changing damage. And not only that, Poirier's coming into this fight with a lot of confidence. He just beat Max Holloway. He's got a belt. So this is the most confidence Poirier's ever had in any fight. This is the best version of him we've ever seen. So I definitely think that Poirier has a better chance than McGregor had. Old Blue wants to know, is Barboza washed?
Yeah, overall picture, I'd say yeah. And we'll see what happens Saturday night with Felder. But like I said, the type of damage that guy has been sustaining in these last few fights definitely shows all the signs of a guy on his way out. He's never... guys usually don't hover around the same spot for how long he is, and he's starting to fall down, so...
Yeah, I'm going to agree, man. I'm going to say Barboza is washed, even though he might win this fight. And if he does, I think it'll be because Felder didn't throw enough. But, man, I got Felder in this fight. And, I mean, look, man, Barboza used to be top 5 in the world. Now he's top 8 in the world. After this fight, he's going to be top 15 in the world. And the next one, he's going to be unranked. So I do think that while he might not be washed to a point where, he's already been dropped with jabs back in his prime. So let's just say he is washed, okay? Let's leave it at that. Pumbaa wants to know, what's our opinion on the wave of African fighters debuting in the UFC?
I vouch for pretty much every African. I think I've tweeted my love for the African fighters. I pretty much vouch for all of them except Kennedy Njoku. But hey, even him, he's super long, man. He won his last fight, so... But I'm a big fan. They're some of the most powerful athletes. They can be completely green and still win just based on pure strength and, mental fortitude. So I love the African fighters.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think that the emerging African prospects are some of the best athletes, just pure athletes that we've ever seen in the history of the sport. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to start to see a lot more guys. And now we have 2 African champions with Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya. And I think you're going to start to see a lot more guys come out there. I think Francis Ngannou might become a champion soon. And Sodiq Yusuff has potential. And there's a lot of guys on the up. That guy that got signed off Contender Series. Even the guy that didn't get signed, Impa. So there's a lot of African prospects. You definitely have to watch out for that part of the world. Even our boy, even the very exciting Razak Al Hassan, so... Definitely 100% love the African fighters debuting. Very exciting guys, freak athletes. Can't wait to see what else they bring to the table. So TKO Pick says, do you guys think Felder's previous fight's concussion will play a role in Saturday's fight? Let me take this first. So I didn't know that Felder got a concussion in the Vic fight. I still don't know if that's true. But one thing I will say is I 100% know that Barboza got a concussion in the Gaethje fight.
Nah, because the other guy got one too, right?
The other guy got one way worse, and then against Lee and Khabib, forget about it. So, nah, man.
Other guys had like 5 concussions in the. I'm just kidding, but nah, I don't think it will.
Yeah, I don't really think it will either, man. So, all right, well, Shaq. Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, real quick, just thank you to all the fans for sending us those questions. We really appreciate it, and thank you guys for listening to Half the Battle. Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, Shaq, what is the fight to watch for UFC 242?
My fight to watch is going to be the co-main event, Edson Barboza versus Paul Felder. It's quite interesting. Paul Felder's been commentating Edson's, last 4 or 5 fights cage side. He's been having a very good up and close personal look at Edson. Now he's getting to fight him. Time Edson fights, like I said, one of the greatest, flashiest strikers in the history of the sport. I'm interested to see if Felder clears another hurdle, and or if Edson can regain some old form. So that's my fight to watch.
My fight to watch is Mairbek Taisumov versus Diego Ferreira. Look, like I already mentioned on the show, the winner of this fight is most likely getting a top 15 ranking. And this is just going to be a hell of a fight in general. I mean, both these guys are super exciting. Mairbek Taisumov, unbelievably explosive and powerful. Diego Ferreira with that very opportunistic jiu-jitsu and the ever-improving stand-up. I just have a feeling that this fight's going to end inside the distance. It's going to be total chaos while it lasts. So for that reason, Diego Ferreira versus Mairbek Taisumov is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who's your fighter to watch for UFC Abu Dhabi?
My fighter to watch is going to be someone fighting really early in the night, but he's a little intriguing to me, and that's the Magic Man, Don Madge. He represents a country, South Africa, a big country, and man, I like the kid's confidence, and it's just really intriguing to see this transformation that he's been on in the last year or so. So I'm interested to see how he's going to perform on Saturday. He was getting ready for that war zone with Mustafayev. Now he gets the newcomer instead. It possibly could be a better situation for him. So he's my fighter to watch. I'm interested to see how he performs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. When you talk about transformations, there's not a better example than Don Madge. So I'm very curious to see how he looks. But for me, my fighter to watch is Dustin the Diamond Poirier. I mean, when you talk about a guy who's truly paid his dues, when you talk about a guy who, he didn't talk to get a title shot, he didn't beat a couple frauds to get a title shot. This is a guy that's literally been through all the ups and downs and has paid his dues in every possible manner you could. We're talking about this guy was in the WEC. This guy was in the UFC 20-plus fights and had the ups and downs, had to overcome adversity. He's been through everything. I mean, there was a time, I don't know if some of the newer fans remember back when Poirier was fighting the Cub Swansons and the Korean Zombies, people used to say that Dustin Poirier can't win a big fight. He can't win a main event. And, then he ended up winning a main event. And then they were saying that he can't beat former champions. Then he finishes Pettis and Gaethje. Then they were saying he can't beat current champions. And he goes out there and beats Max Holloway and becomes an interim champion. Now they're saying he can't beat the man that has never been beat before. That's 27-0. I understand why they're saying that. So let's see if Dustin Poirier flips the script and creates history and becomes the first man ever to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov. So just because of all the trials and tribulations Dustin Poirier has overcome to get this main event title shot in Abu Dhabi versus the most dominant lightweight in UFC history, for that reason, Dustin Poirier is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, it's going down this Saturday afternoon in Abu Dhabi, UFC 242. That lightweight belt is on the line. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Our bets are available at bestfightpicks.com. Make sure you use that promo code FORTUNE to save 10% off any VIP package. We want to thank you guys so much for all your support. As always, we love you guys all. And make sure you tune into what we got coming up. Got a lot of exciting things in the works. Make sure you subscribe to Half the Battle. Everywhere we're available: iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Music Radio. There's a lot of other spots. Just type in Half the Battle. Thank you guys again very much. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.